Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Avenging Spirit, brought to us by Jaleco. Avenging Spirit is a very unique action platformer where you're actually playing as a ghost who can possess the bodies of enemies and then use their bodies in order to progress in the levels and take out other enemies. There's a large variety of various different enemies that you can actually possess during the course of the game, and it's definitely one of my favorite games on the Nintendo Game Boy. So here we go with Avenging Spirit for the Nintendo Game Boy. When we start the game, we're going to wait at the title screen for just a few moments so that we can get the opening storyline of the game before we jump into the first level. After the opening story and then pressing start at the title screen, you'll get a little bit more story before you basically get a very small tutorial to pick the first of the enemies that you want to take control of. When you make it to this screen, you have 3 enemies below you, and you can decide which one that you want to possess. And we're going to take over the kind of mafia gangster-like guy who uses a gun that fires these big circular bullets out as the first of the enemies we'll take control of. Now, during the course of this run, I'm going to be switching bodies multitude of times, but I won't be playing as every one of the enemies, nor am I necessarily picking the ones that are always the best in order to complete bosses or get through certain stages. Early on, though, I'm going to go ahead and switch off of the Mafia guy and switch over to the first of the female enemies that you can be. She has a very high kick and punch from in the air in order to take out enemies. Now, 2 things you'll notice at the bottom of the screen is your energy meter, which is your total health, and then the L meter represents how much you have left in that particular form. Using moves getting hit will drain that energy, and it will end up causing you to leave the body. You'll no longer be able to possess it. So you always have to keep an eye on both. Now we're going to switch over to this bomb-throwing enemy here, a grenade-throwing enemy, and use him to take out the first boss, who, as you can see, pops out of the ground, and if you're able to hit it, it'll go immediately right back down into the ground. But if you give it a few seconds, it will fire projectiles. So your goal is to make sure that you're not right underneath the enemy when it pops out, and hit it before it's able to get any kind of firepower out at you. The other big part of the game that you'll have to worry about is the keys. You'll notice in the lower right corner there's a silhouette of 3 giant keys, and you need to collect all of them in order to get the good ending to the game. The keys are always in the same locations, and they are in levels 2, levels 5, and level 6. So levels 3 and 4 you won't have to worry about locating a key. Obviously, same goes for level 1. There's a couple of different types of items that you'll find. You'll have the health potions, usually half a jar or a full jar, which will replenish the main E-meter, and then you have those weird looking kind of simple things on the ground that I picked up just a few moments ago that refills the L-meter. Picking your favorite enemies, though, will be up to you as far as being able to take out the various other enemies that you'll be dealing with. Entering inside this door, we'll find the first of the 3 keys. This one is the most straightforward and easiest to find of them all. The wizard-like enemies are another one that are pretty fun to use. There is a kind of white version and a black version that you can get in various levels that fire either lightning bolts or fire-powered shots out of them. They also slowly float down, as you can see the wind picks up underneath of their cape-like outfit and ends up blowing, causing them to slowly descend. Now for this boss fight, you'll have to watch out for the giant wrecking ball that opens up and crashes down on top of you, and every few seconds, the thing on the right will raise, allowing you to get a couple of shots at the giant construction vehicle itself. Always pay attention to the construction wrecking ball so that you can make it drop and then use the opportunity after it drops in order to get in a couple of shots on the boss itself. This is a very straightforward boss, and I'm not sure if this is really the best of the enemies to use because it's a little bit slow and not that powerful of a hit, but overall it's a pretty good and easy strategy for completing this level. Stage number 3 takes place kind of like an industrial city type of stage. You'll start off by going up a couple of moving elevators, and you can actually use the elevators as momentum to get extra height with your jump. As long as they're going upwards, they seem to propel you much, much higher into the air. We're going to stay with the enemy that we currently are for the beginning portion of this stage and work our way along the rooftop. When you have multiple of this type of enemy that we currently are on screen, you can see that they fire out a ton of projectiles, which can get quite annoying, along with the projectiles of a lot of the other enemies that you're battling here. Now, we normally will go just straight left, but I'm going to climb up here in order to take over the body of this ninja located here. One of the reasons is the ninja has a decent projectile, but overall I just kind of wanted to show him off. Be careful here, jumping across these disappearing, reappearing platforms, and trying to not fall into those beautiful spikes underneath of us. Climb up the left ladder, watch out for the invisible guy who won't be able to do damage to you as he's walking in the background at least. And then move your way across to the bottom portion here and make our way towards the end of the stage. Thankfully, we didn't have to worry about finding a key during the course of this level. Another great enemy, though, is really fun to play as, is right here, the vampire enemy, or Dracula type enemy. These guys, as you can see, throw out bats. They are quite slow, and definitely not the best for really any kind of encounter, but they're just so awesome I had to show him. The boss fires out 2 different styles of projectiles, either a straight out single shot or 2 shots at once, which you can actually work your way in between, which is the best way to kind of deal with the boss, staying on a platform and trying to get in between the different shots that he fires out. Though honestly, using the Dracula enemy here isn't the best here, as you can find some other of the enemies that fire a more straightforward shot that'll probably do you better, but it's still pretty fun to use him in order to defeat this snake, and as you can see, it doesn't do a lot of damage to him either with each hit of the projectile, so it definitely takes a while as well. Once he finally goes down, though, we have another cutscene before moving into stage 4. Stage number 4, as you can see, is a sewer-themed level. Aren't these everyone's favorite in every old-school retro game? Either way, though, we're going to drop Dracula and switch over to the baseball guy. Of course, being a huge baseball fan, I have to at least show this guy off, though he's definitely not one of my favorites to use overall in the game. He, of course, can hit people not only with his bat, but he also fires out, I guess it's supposed to be a baseball-like projectile out that will actually bounce on surfaces, so it can actually be useful for hitting certain types of enemies, though honestly, in this level, it doesn't come all that in handy. This area right here where you have to move up a slope while the enemies are falling down, it can be a bit difficult to actually land the projectile shots on those enemies as they roll down the river here. Be careful of this guy here, he likes to usually fire out a lightning bolt at me as I'm trying to fall down. Now, from this point on though, you'll see the ninja guys with the nunchucks. They are arguably my favorite of the enemies in the game that you get to become, so I will switch over to him. They're fast, they can jump pretty well, and the nunchuck weaponry, while of course isn't as long distance as a projectile, seems to rock most enemies up close, so it's actually worth it to try to keep a hold of him. If possible, I'll remain as this ninja for the rest of the game. Now this boss is a little bit challenging. Not only does he pop out of the water and take a good amount of space up, he'll also fire a couple of projectiles out before then having like fire rain down from the sky while you're trying to move in between it. He pops up wherever you're standing after all the fire drops away, so make sure that you're able to quickly move the opposite side of him so that you can get in a few hits and also have enough space so that you can jump and avoid the projectiles that he fires out. He'll fire 2 before going up into the air and then causing the fireballs to come down. Honestly though, I think he's a little bit easier to tangle with than the one from the last level though. Stage number 5 is the second level that contains one of the keys that we need for the good ending of the game. Start off by using our ninja here to nunchuck a few enemies before going inside of the factory. Watch out for the fire towers that shoot up from the ground, and you'll have multiple different branching paths to take during this stage. First, start off by taking the upper path, and then immediately go to the door just above you. You'll have a couple of rooms here which are a little bit difficult because a lot of enemies like to spawn here, especially these ones that fire out fireballs. So you get 3 or 4 of those guys, all firing fireballs. It can be a bit difficult. The next room has ninjas throwing stars at you as well as lasers going up and down. So be very careful, grab the key on the far end, and then backtrack. Enemies will respawn as you're making your way back to the room. When you go to the next room, be sure to grab a little bit of extra health in the small little jar before going through the door and back to this hallway. Now we can proceed through the level since we have the key. In the next room, be very careful, jump on these up and down moving elevators and grab some health in a small jar before going through the next door. Followed right up by a big leap over a pit if you have a good jumping guy that you currently are, or else wait for the invisible platform to appear so that you can move across it safely. Here you can choose between upper and down path. I'm going to go to the bottom path and pick up some energy replenishment for my current character, and then go through the door at the top, and then have to make a series of relatively challenging jumps, at least as far as the jumps in this game is concerned, and make my way over to the far right side. Once here, work my way down a couple of stairs through another door, and just keep on moving through. When you come to this split here, take the bottom path, and then continue on. You'll have these guys with missile backpacks. Pretty cool enemies, but we're not going to change into them. Just take them out with the ninja nunchuck and move on. Here we'll be in a similar room to the very first one of this area, with a large health near the end before going into the boss door. The boss is a snake-like demon creature that flies all around in circular-like patterns and can be a little bit rough to tell exactly where he's going to go to next, so always be cautious and attack from afar. Using the nunchuck, you'll have enough distance to keep hitting him, but be able to move out of the way with your big jumps when trying to deliver hits. Overall, a pretty easy boss for this late in the game, and then we get to move on to the 6th and final level of the game. As we start off the level, an enemy is going to be coming right towards you, so make sure that you have your attack ready in order to take them out. Then climb up a little bit and start moving across the platforms above the ground here. This is just to have a little bit less for you to deal with, and it's pretty easy to traverse. Once here, move up, wait for the up and down moving platform. You can grab some extra health if you need to on the platform with the invisible guy, and then continue up to the next couple of platforms until you're up here. Once near the top level, work your way to the left underneath the guy throwing out the grenades at you and just continue along this path. You'll eventually run into one of those energy replenishments for your enemy that you currently are if you need it, and then the next room is the big room here. You're gonna have to spell the word ghost in order to unlock the door that contains the final key. Pretty easy to do, but you have to find all the blocks. The hardest though is right here. These blocks where I'm standing on are invisible until you land on them, so you'll have to climb up the ladder and then jump your way across to the left across these platforms. Once you are over here, work your way to the left, you'll run into the letter O, make sure that you jump on it so that you can see the letters are being spelt out at the bottom of the screen. Climb the ladder, watching out for the lasers coming out of both sides of the walls, and then work your way along the right side here. Just a little ways over though, you'll come to the letters S, and then head over and down right here in order to find the letter T. Once you've spelled the word ghost, drop all the way down to the bottom of the screen on this left side, or you'll find the door that has ghost written outside of it, and you can go inside to find the third and final key. Now that you have this, climb your way back up the ladder. You can see I do some short jumps up the ladder in order to kind of speed along the process. And now we have to head back right to the ladder that we ended up jumping off of to go across those invisible platforms a few moments ago. Once back over here, climb up, watching out again for some more lasers and a Dracula enemy at the top waiting to throw a bat your way. Once in here, you'll find a door where you use all 3 of the keys that you found throughout the game to open up the door and find your former girlfriend. After a pretty interesting animation overall, you end up possessing your girlfriend and you actually get to control her, she is easily one of the most powerful and best of the characters to use in the game, and we get to use her for the final boss. Drop down where the letter says go with the arrow pointing and get ready for the final boss fight. The guy flies in a giant ship and just keep launching laser beams at him. If you have good health going into the fight, you can just blast him and you'll take him out way before he's able to take out you. Overall though, the missiles can be a bit rough to dodge, but once he goes down, you can sit back and enjoy the ending to Avenging Spirit. So there you have Avenging Spirit for the Nintendo Game Boy. Unfortunately, a rather short game overall, but just the entire premise was one of my absolute favorite gimmicks as far as the game is concerned on the Game Boy. I really wish this game would have ended up having multiple sequels on the Game Boy or other systems as time went on, because the concept itself is actually pretty unique and actually is executed quite well in the game. One of the things, as you can tell, that makes the game so fun is you can pick different enemies to take control of through each playthrough. So it's a large variety of various characters that you'll be able to control through the game. So each playthrough you do, you can try to use different enemies, and you can get a lot of gameplay just by changing up who you end up playing as. Once we get to the end, rolling up, it'll freeze at the center of the screen, and with that though, it will wrap up this edition of Play It Through. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a thumbs up or commenting down below. If you enjoyed this Game Boy game, check out one of the ones I did for one of my absolute favorite handheld games ever, Wario Land, Super Mario Land 3. I did that last year during my May of Wario month. I also need to thank all the members of my Patreon. Your guys' continued support allows me to keep doing the videos and continue all the channel updates, whether it be play-it-throughs, reviews, and everything else. Puts money in the budget that allows me to keep getting games, get new equipment, and honestly just be able to keep going in general. But thank you guys so much for that awesome continued support. If you'd like to help out, you just click the little Patreon button down below. There's some awesome incentives for also becoming a member of my Patreon. But anyway guys, that'll wrap up this video. Thank you so much for being a part of the Cornshaq Nation, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.